Welcome to the first workspace for Join the Pack. This is the introductory workspace. The introductory workspace always takes us a little longer to go through just because we have so much to cover. You need to remember that it's broken down into goals, resources, evidence, and rubrics. There's 4 kinds of types of cards or tasks or things that could be put on the workspace. Under goals, it's always just going to be the outcomes you're meant to cover or the overall goal of what we want you to do with this workspace. The resources can vary from videos to documents to pictures to slideshows to hints and tips and articles. All of them will start with a workspace introduction video and then a variety of other resources there for you to help you be successful. And then under evidence, this is the actual stuff that you're going to be required to hand into your teacher or to show your teacher. For convenience, at the bottom of each evidence card, you'll see that there is a doc already attached. That's for you to complete that E1 or E2. You'll notice they're numbered E1, E2. You can complete that task and then it can be handed into your teacher however they request. And then under rubrics, you're going to see this assessment rubric over and over and over again. So make sure that you kind of get some familiarization with it. But the assessment rubric basically goes from red, not meeting the outcomes, to green, which means exemplary. You want to aim for competent to skilled. If not exemplary, you want to end up on this top end of the half. And you're always going to come back to that. You're always going to be referring back to that assessment rubric throughout. So this project has a project trailer that I hope you'll watch and get to know a little bit about what's happening in the project. The other thing that you're going to find in each workspace is in the introduction, not only will you find a video, but you're also going to find a link to a doc that will be the project booklet, the section of the project booklet that the workspace corresponds to. So in this case, I've attached the entire project booklet for Join the Pack Ecosystems and Population Change, including every part of it. So if you wanted to print this off or you wanted to save it into your own documents, into your own drive or onto your own computer, you can do that so that you have your own copy. And then you can be kind of coming back and forth to this all the time instead of trying to flip-flop. What you're going to notice, though, is that each part of the project broken down into a bullet point will correspond to a card on a workspace. So a little bit about this project. I'm not going to read this whole introduction along the side. I'm going to expect that you'll do that. But just the idea that this project is going to focus on the large predator. It's an apex predator. It's the gray wolf. And this idea that just a little over a century ago, there was an estimated 100,000 gray or timber wolves roaming the western parts of North America. As ranchers and farmers started to move west, however, the wolves were poisoned, shot, and trapped whenever they could be found. Eventually, in the early 1900s, they were almost completely eliminated from the northern Rocky Mountains. Without a predator to restrain their numbers, elk and deer populations expanded rapidly. So in Yellowstone National Park, which we're going to talk about a lot in this project, it is the most famous case study of wolf populations, probably in the world. And this idea that what they did is they realized that without the wolf population, ecologically, Yellowstone National Park was being damaged. And so they actually took them 20 years campaigning, but in 1995, 31 wolves were trapped just outside of Kananaskis, and they were brought down to Yellowstone National Park. And by 2005, there were over 165 wolves in 15 different packs across Yellowstone National Park, and another 850 wolves repopulating Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. So they saw there's been lots of studies onto the effects of whether this has been good or bad for the ecosystem, and that's really what you're going to look into in this entire project. Not everyone's happy that they did this. You'll read about ranchers and you'll read about people that are not happy because livestock is still being threatened. And then you'll come back to this kind of our Canadian connection to this. But in BC currently, they're entering it's probably the 3rd year by now of the controversial plan to save endangered caribou in the north. And they're planning on killing about 200 wolves over a course of a few years. Alberta just finished a wolf cull that took about 10 years and resulted in about 1,000 deaths of wolves. And they say that they did save the Little Smoky caribou herd. So those are things you're going to be looking at us. And really what I want you to think about throughout this entire project are these overarching questions of what is our responsibility as humans to protect the environment we interact with? Should, as humans, we be responsible for bringing ecological balance to a system? So when you're working through this project, there's the main goals, there's the resources, evidence, and rubrics. And just remember, think about those focusing questions. You're going to have to form an opinion. That is what your final task is going to be, is to form an opinion. How do you feel about human activity impacting species, populations, and community? Does it strengthen or does it weaken an ecosystem? And how can you use what you've learned about Yellowstone National Park and the wolves there to help you back up your opinion? You'll also see that under evidence, you have a project calendar. Consult with your teacher to see about a timeline for this project. There's also a project planner that you'll need to complete. And this ensures that you look over the whole project before starting and just gives you a list of what you need to do and where you're going so that you have set yourself up. You might have some really pertinent information already in your brain about this stuff. So this will help you kind of connect what you already know and where you're heading. And then the second to last thing on here is the project I can statements. And those statements are there for you to go through prior to the project, during the project, after the project to say, hey, I get this, I sort of get it, I don't get it, I need more support, I don't need any more support. It's kind of like a self-check-in throughout. So make sure you check out those as well. And then the last thing on here are some optionals. There's the Jack London book called White Fang. If you've ever seen the Disney movie from the 90s, you might be able to get your hands on that as well. But there's a double-sided entry journal that if your teacher asks that you read that book, you'll be able to do that, which might give you a little bit of insight into the wolf, the historical perspective of the wolf. There's also an optional field study. Again, you'll need to check with your teacher about how they want you to complete that. There's an online virtual field study, or maybe your teacher has planned a field trip for you to do a field trip this year.